Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It is April 15th, 2021, and I will start as usual by reading our vision statement here in Ashland. The Ashland Public Schools cultivates the academic and social-emotional growth of each student through a supportive, collaborative, innovative, and challenging environment. Students will develop into self-motivated, resilient, lifelong learners who embrace their role as responsible contributors to a global community. This meeting is being recorded by WACA Cable TV, and our order of business this evening is our call to order. We will not need an executive session this evening, so we will be going right into the items on our agenda, which include agenda review and adoption. There are no presentations. We will have time for public comment if there's anyone here who wants to give some. Our administrative items, action and/or information this evening includes the superintendent's update, COVID-19, public hearing on school choice, approval of SY 2021-2022 budget, athletics spring season, superintendent's mid-cycle update, assistant superintendent update, warrant approvals, Kathleen Bates, consent actions. I don't believe there are any gifts and donations, but if there are, we'll do them there. And we will have member updates, action items, and then we will adjourn. So I will take attendance and ask you all to just confirm that you're okay with the order of business this evening. Kathy Bates.
Here and yes.
Paul Kendall.
Here and yes.
Mark Terry.
Here and yes.
And Aaron Williams. I don't see Aaron yet. So Erin Paolini, I think she's not here yet. So we will get started with asking if there's anybody here from the public that would like to offer comment this evening. And then seeing none, Jim will go right into your update and the COVID-19 update, please.
Oh, I'm muted. Thank you for getting rid of the executive session. I appreciate it. We didn't need it, so it was late notice, but I apologize for committee members, and thank you to the admin team for being flexible as well. So let's get right into the COVID dashboard. Oh, that's not the one we want. This is. And I just want to, again, as I start every COVID update, thank our nursing staff and Ed for their continued hard work and effort. This is the first full week back with all grades, K-12, of in-person learning. And I've left some time on my end. If anyone wants to ask questions of our administrators, they're all here, the principals, to see how things are going. But what I want to emphasize is that as we continue with dealing with COVID, I think, Lori and I were talking, the pandemic is not over, folks. It's still in existence, and we're still going to have COVID cases, even though many of us within the Ashland community and surrounding communities have been vaccinated. There's still COVID that is being transmitted out there in our public and in our households. And I continue to try to emphasize, I don't know how many people are really listening to the messaging anymore, that taking care of ourselves and wearing our mask and properly physical distancing, and when we're in really tight, crowded spaces and or large gatherings, that we continue to do those things and not send our kids to school when they're not feeling well, things of that nature. So what you'll notice is in this week's update, we certainly saw another increase in the number of cases in the week. Not many are school related, thank goodness, but they are impacting the schools because of the quarantines. This morning, through our pool testing, and again, I want to highlight and emphasize that the pool testing has a real legitimate purpose, right? And that is helping us to identify asymptomatic carriers of COVID. And I think we had 110, correct me, Audrey, if I'm wrong, 110 students participate this week. So we've changed it to Tuesdays, where we still have time to collect the information before the weekends. But with both cohorts being in school, we're able to test all the students. It took about 3 hours of our nursing staff time to actually run the pooling on that day. So this morning, we were actually notified of all the pools that we had 2 pools, one at the Mendez School, which is a faculty staff testing only, and one at the high school, which was a student pool where someone tested positive. And then we go through the process of bringing those pool members into, in this instance, they all came to the high school. Some were already in the high school because we had to track down the pool itself and go through the second testing, the Binex now testing. And we were able to identify the individuals within our community at the high school, as well as at the Mendez, who tested positively. And then that begins another chain, right? That begins, where are the close contacts, and what do we do with the close contacts in terms of, now we have to begin the process of quarantining. So what you'll notice is that APS student quarantine number went up dramatically. And that's partly, there's 22 students that were identified through the pool testing, close contacts. And although we're in school and there might be classrooms that are 3 to 6 feet apart in those students, DPH hasn't changed their guidelines with regard to who's considered a close contact. While CDC and the Department of Ed have stated 3 feet is appropriate in terms of the spacing, the close contact hasn't changed. And so that when you're dealing with high school students, especially who change classes, there's going to be a greater radius, if you will, of those folks who need to be quarantined. So there's 22 that were identified within this pool. The one pool positive, and that individual, the close contacts of that individual throughout the day and the week. So again, we are keeping an eye on these things, and I want to continue to emphasize, I think we picked up 8 more families that signed up their students to participate, and I'll send another email out today asking if anyone wants to continue to sign up for the pool testing after we get back from break. Obviously, we're all quite concerned. There's certainly a lot of travel planned for the break. We know about a lot of it, and I've heard chatter. So we will continue to monitor that. I think, we're looking at our positivity rate. It's holding steady at around the 3-4 range. And, we're hoping we see a decline. Ed and Audrey have been working, steadfastly in trying to identify families and household, transmission. And that's what we're seeing again the most of. It's still within household transmissions. We are not seeing any transmission in schools. And that's important to note. Last week when we had this conversation on Friday, we had talked about the David Mendez School having a number of close contacts. And none of those individuals who were deemed close contacts came back positive. So again, I think our process of wearing masks and good ventilation and air purifiers, those are the mitigators that are allowing us to really be productive and stay open from that lens. Not recommending at this point any change in our process upon return from vacation, but I will always withhold reservations throughout next week and see what happens. We don't have the flexibility we once had to just move directly into a remote setting. I think it's important for folks to understand that we need official approval from the Department of Ed with regard to any movement away from in-person learning, with the exception of the high school at this point, because they have yet to provide the exact start date yet of the high school. That will be coming out probably next week. We've been given a foreshadow by the commissioner that it will be happening, but he hasn't set the date yet. So questions on the dashboard before I turn it over to you to ask questions of admin about how the week has gone. And for Claudia and Pete, it's really their first 2 weeks.
Yeah, Jim, I had two things, I guess, some more observations related to the dashboard and the pool testing. One, and I know this is a small point, we're obviously talking about this in open session here, but the description you have in the context, where it says 22 students were considered close contacts to pool testing, I'm a little concerned that to the extent somebody reads that without context,
Okay.
it goes back to the concern some people thought existed early when we started pool testing of, am I close contact because I was in the same pool, right? And so I think it may be just wise to sort of identify that there were 2 positives identified from pool testing and 22 close contacts.
We're a
Period,
direct result of
right?
it.
Yeah, I don't know how people really look at this, but when I looked at that, I'm like, I know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
But there was that confusion early on in the process.
Okay.
The second thing is that, I see your emails sort of encouraging other people to sign up. It strikes me that there may be an opportunity to kind of push that number up in terms of participants when people do come back from vacation, right? Because I hear the same thing. A lot of people are going away next week. And, if the email going to people on, Sunday night or something like that is a reminder, if you've been traveling and at an increased risk, we offer this service kind of thing. Maybe we pick up a few more families doing that too.
Yeah, Audrey and I talked about that. Was it today or yesterday, Audrey? It was yesterday, about a messaging just specifically related to the travel folks, Mark. Yeah.
Thanks, Jim. That's all I have.
Yeah.
Jim, I just had a question, when you did get those positives back for those 2 pools,
Yep.
were they alerted before they got to school? So they knew the night before, or?
No, we didn't get the results, Kathy, until
You didn't
this
get the
morning.
results? All right.
Yeah.
And then they just were called down to the nurse's office?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a function of when we get the information.
Yeah.
And if we don't get, actually, I'd sent Audrey an email early this morning before 7 and said, we still don't have results of 2 pools. I got back from walking the dog and I got, 2 pools are positive. So like literally within a 5-10 minute time frame of reaching out to Audrey saying we're nothing yet. We had the information, and then folks are on their way to school, and we've got to get our nursing staff deployed to track down the pool itself, which pool it was, who made up that pool, and then we begin that process of calling those individuals, getting them tested.
Other questions or comments for Jim?
So I would open it up if you want to our administrators, if you have questions about, or if they want to offer up, a very short, opening of how school has gone for them and their students. I think there have certainly been some challenges. I will publicly state that one of the challenges that I see and continue to see is our transportation. And that we strongly encourage our students and our families to utilize APS transportation. And I sent that message out again. We're finding that obviously the more folks who are driving at the high school, for instance, we have a lot of parents and students, but more parents who are driving their kids and causing certainly traffic concerns. And that's not going to get better unless folks take busing. I know Kelly's had conversations with the Ashland Police, and they want us to encourage, and we have been encouraging our folks to take APS transportation. We can't mandate it, obviously, but we're certainly going to continue to encourage them to utilize our busing. Pete, Claudia.
Sure.
Kelly, Dave, just real quick. Yep.
Very, very proud of the students and the staff for the continued flexibility that they've been showing over the last 9 days where we've had all of our in-person learners in the building. There's been new schedules that were created. Our lunch times, we had to add additional lunch times, so we start earlier and go later. on that time. Routines of classrooms, of just changing the way you walk around a room and do any of these things for 5, 6, 7, and 8-year-olds. It has been incredible. And again, for what the students have been able to do over these 9 days and the adults from working with them, that flexibility has been key. The teachers have been resetting the cultures of the classroom, these two groups together, and to make that one family of the classroom. We've had quite a few remote learning academy students who joined our in-person learning, some homeschool students who came back to in-person learning. So for those children, it was a big transition, and to learn just some of the new ways that the Warren School looks and how we function, that they haven't had that practice that everyone else has had over the course of the year. But it's been extremely successful. It's great to see everyone in our classrooms, the kids working together, and the kids are excited by this as well.
Thanks.
Sure, I'll jump in. I'll echo what Pete said. We have about 518 students who are now in person, about 117 that are in the Remote Learning Academy. We had about 17 students that came in from the Remote Learning Academy. Yes, to echo what Pete said, it's been a little bit of a learning curve for them. We've experienced that this year a couple of times with teachers that came back from maternity leave, and just a different experience and that. But the kids have been great. They are so happy to be all in person. When I go into the classrooms every day, I ask them, are you still happy to be all together? And they all give me thumbs up, probably 95% of them. And as are the teachers. The teachers couldn't be any happier. They're tired some days. You definitely notice the difference when you go into a classroom with that many students, and now they're talking and they're excited. But the teachers are so excited to have their kids in person. They're looking for places where they can have small groups, and we're creating some spaces for them to be able to do that. So they're really excited. Our counselors have just been, wonderful. They have moved from the remote classrooms of SEL to in-person, once a week for every class. I've heard a couple of stories. One story about one child in there who, as soon as he heard that everybody's going to be coming together again, his best friend happened to be in the opposite cohort. And he had been sort of sad this year, and he has been smiling and skipping through the hall. And the reason they told me this story, because I saw him the other day and I said, whoa. And they said, he's been like that ever since we said we were all going to be together. And he continues to be like that. So it's things like that that really help you to know that even on the tough days when we have these challenges, we know that this is the right thing for our kids and our families. And I just couldn't be any happier overall. Sometimes, you get caught up in some of the things that are happening and you're having to work with. But when you look at overall what's going on in our schools, as Pete said, very proud of our staff and students.
Thank
Dave?
you.
Yep. So I think we're off to a great start. It's 4 days in. We have about 50 students still in our remote learning program. So probably 620, 625 students in the building at any given time. As Jim had mentioned, certainly we have a lot of cars coming in the morning and leaving in the afternoon. But to be honest with you, it's worked out. I mean, I think it's definitely, you notice the numbers, you can feel the numbers. But overall, it's going really well. We try to keep things moving. As far as lunch goes, we did have to adjust lunch, and we clearly have more students in our lunch in a large gym. Actually, Lisa Bowden has been great. I met with her. A lot of the meals are grab and go, so students are getting their meals a lot quicker and can get back to their seats. We want to make sure we have time to get students outside. So the last couple of days, we've been getting students outside, and it's worked out really well. In terms of what I'm loving about it is the energy in the building. You can feel it. You definitely, it feels more normal. Sometimes, I don't know, you'd walk into a classroom in that hybrid model and it was a little too quiet. So I think definitely now in the hallways, there's that energy. There's the energy in the classroom. I'd echo what Claudia said. I think some of the students are happy to see the friends that they didn't see that were in the other cohort. Whether they're seeing them now at lunch, they're connecting with them now at recess. So I'm seeing students interacting with other students. Maybe they weren't in that first half or the first 3 quarters of the year, if you will. So I think that's been a huge positive. So certainly comes with its challenges, but I think going into it after 4 days in, knowing the challenges we had in front of us, I think it's gone actually very well. And I will say the students have been amazing. Just the fact that they've adjusted to this so quickly. We're still not having any issues with any of the protocols or routines. Those 50 students who did return from the remote program, again, there's a learning curve there, but they've had friends help them out and take them under their wing, so to speak. And those students are catching on fast, and they're happy to be in the building. So I think really largely it's been positive. And again, talking to the teachers, it's just great having all the students in front of them and having them in the class, even though there's a lot of students moving around the building, but I don't know, the energy has been great. So I'm very pleased with the way it's gone so far, for sure.
Kelly?
Similar to what the others have said, I think our remote numbers did not change a lot. We're still at about 50, so we have about 750 plus in the building. The teachers have expressed it's been nice to have everyone in front of them and not be live streaming, and have felt like the students have been more engaged and interactive, more conversation. It was very quiet often at the high school, which we're not used to, and it seems to have changed now that everyone is back together. Students are more willing to engage in classroom conversation and dialogue, which has been nice. Lunch, we've been very appreciative, have some parent volunteers in to help out with that. We do have 150 desks set up in the gym. We're lucky to have a couple nice days of outdoor weather. But we are going to evaluate whether or not we move to a fully using just the gym and the cafeteria seats for lunch as we move forward. As we work with them, it has been a challenge for the older students to adhere to the protocols. So we'll keep working on that. We kicked off Monday with, as we normally do the first week of school, doing an all school activity. We did that classroom based rather than moving around. So our PBS team did a nice job putting that together. We had class meetings with every class, so it was nice to see them all together. At one time, we brought everyone into the auditorium and sat every third seat and reviewed some of our expectations. Our counselors were out at lunches with some stretch toys and that type of thing, reminding them of the to balance the excitement. And we understood there was also a lot of anxiety with the students at this age. Yesterday we did the developmental relationship survey, and looking forward to getting the results when Ben gets those. In terms of arrival and dismissal, certainly grateful for the parents who have kind of adjusted with our protocols and expectations. Monday was a tough day. Our traffic was backed up all the way down to CVS, maybe the middle school. We just made some adjustments with our traffic pattern into the high school. Like Jim said, we talked to APD and now have someone up helping with directing traffic, and just being able to move those cars quickly off campus with a number of parents doubling, doing pickup helped. And I think parents have, got the idea to maybe spread out their arrival time a little bit. That's about it. We'll keep looking forward to, kind of tweaking and adjusting. We're going to make a few more furniture changes over vacation. It definitely had a few classrooms that felt tight. But overall, things are looking good, and we're lucky to have some of that furniture that we can move around next week to make the space a little more comfortable for everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Does anybody have any questions or comments, or anybody else who wants to weigh in here? It was wonderful to have all those reports, and it sounds like overall kids are happy, teachers are happy, and things are going well. So thank you for your commitment to that. And if, one more chance, any other comments or questions? I'll move on to the next item on our agenda. If not. Okay, public hearing on school choice.
So as you know, each year, we need to come together to have a conversation whether or not we're going to continue to offer school choice for the next year. Obviously, those students who are part of school choice that we've approved in years past will always get the opportunity to have their seat moving forward. But each year we have to determine whether or not we're going to offer it new seats for the next year. And in our policy, we have a deadline of May 1st to determine the number of spaces in each building or each grade level. And then we send out notices to the community. So that being said, I just want to share a couple of documents and a couple of pieces of information with you. I certainly would understand that as we're just had conversations about space and limiting our students in classrooms and what it looks like, that you would, and I know this from one member anyway, have the conversation about, why are we thinking of even adding more students into the mix than we need to because of COVID and thinking down the road. And I just want to share some of the data and why I am thinking the way I'm thinking. And then I'll take some questions. But I want to just talk about right now. We currently have. Can everyone see that? Okay. We have 44 students in school choice for this current year, and I wanted to give you a flavor from where our students come from. Framingham 17, Milford, Holliston are the other two larger ones, and then sporadic from Medway down to Wayland. Grade levels are important. Grade 3, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Those are current years. So in the 12th grade, 11 of those kids will be graduating out, right? So that's the current number. These are the current numbers. So we'll have 13 seniors, in next year's class. And then what I wanted to do was just show you the estimated enrollment for next year. And we're estimating from NESDEC about 197 kindergartners. And that's a new number. That would be a number that we're anticipating coming in. The first grade number are actual kindergarten students right now, 201 students. So then it rolls forward, as you can tell. The second graders, there's 181 first graders currently this year, 202 second graders, et cetera. So the 12th grade number, our number of, the seniors are this year current juniors, 225 students. And that includes, if we go back up, 13 school choice students. So the way I looked at this was, okay, holistically, we count on and rely on school choice funding as one of our major, it's our only revenue stream that we can actually push into the schools for any purposes related to the operations of schools. So unlike transportation fees can only go to transportation, Kelly, Dave, Pete, Claudia, Sarah, they can use school choice funding for textbooks. They can use it for any purpose that relates to the education of a child. So it's our stabilization fund, if you will. I mean, it helps us offset our operating budget. So typically we look at the number of students that we're offering choice and the total number of students that come in. So I went back 3 years to say, how many seats have we offered in the past? And really, how many students are availing themselves to choice? And over a 3-year period, we're averaging just under 50% of the seats are being utilized. So we may offer 10, typically about 5 are used per grade level. Some grades are different. We might get a few more, but overall it's around 50% over a 3-year window. So what I'm recommending is that in grade K, that we add 5 seats. In grade 2, which is our real small class in the elementaries, we add 5. And then no other grades, grade 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, we're not considering adding any school choice seats. But then in grade 9, 10, and 11, we would continue to add seats, 10 seats per. And the reason the 9th grade is we remember we have a number of students here that will end up at Keefe Tech as well. So that number, that 219, is going to drop. We don't know that final number yet, but that number will come down. And again, if we look at the number of students over time, we may pick up 5 to 6 seats at the high school per grade level, potentially. And so that's my recommendation. I think we will have no problem with our, I'm not concerned with regard to the crowding of our classrooms with these seats, only because we're not offering a lot, and historically we're not picking up a lot of students. But the revenue is important to us as one source for us. I'm not suggesting the board jump on it and say, okay, we need the money to do this, and it's not the right thing to do. But I believe from a educational standpoint, we have the flexibility and the capacity within our classrooms to do this. And I have spoken to the building principals specifically about these grade levels and how many we think we can add and be comfortable with those numbers. So I will stop there and look for your questions.
Put it out to the board. Any questions from anybody? Comments, concerns?
So Jim, just 2 questions.
Yep.
That chart it had up, the column that said current enrollment.
Yep.
That's this year's that we're having now?
Correct. With the exception, Paul, of the kindergarten is the estimate.
And why is that an estimate? That's what I was confused
Because
about.
because they're going to be first graders next year. So I moved them.
Okay, so it's next year's numbers.
Correct.
Based on this year's enrollment.
Exactly. They're rolled over.
Right. So that's that. If it's current enrollment, then I would expect
it's rolled over.
Okay.
No, correct. It's rolled over numbers. So I roll them over so you can see how many kids will be in those grades. And that's why I put S 197 for kindergarten. That's based on our NESDEC work that we do each year. Yeah.
Okay. And so that leads me to my second question. I
Yep.
know we typically pick up students in first grade.
Yep.
I think it's been historically around
About 10.
About 10, right?
Yep.
So is the 201 with, is that straight what we have today in kindergarten without the pickup?
Yes.
And then so that is the case?
Yes.
Okay, so then if we're estimating 197 for kindergarten, but we're adding potentially 5, I assume you've gone through this, but we're still comfortable that if all 5 get picked up and we're at 200 before that, we're at 205, we pick up, we're okay with 215 or 220 in subsequent years going forward.
So our goal is to try to keep our class sizes between 20 and 22 students because we have 10 teachers at each grade level. So it falls within those parameters. We have a lot of movement each year. Sometimes we could lose some students. I think coming out of the pandemic, we're not quite sure how many students are going to be coming back and re-enrolling or enrolling in kindergarten. Pete, you just sent a memo out today, I think it was. Is that correct?
Yes, for parent placement.
Right. So, but I talked to Pete for sure before I even came to the board and said, we've had a couple interests in kindergarten, in the kindergarten level, as well as in the second, grade level. And I said, if there's interest, can we potentially add these positions, and how many seats would you feel comfortable even considering? That's why it's different than the high school at 10. So,
and I assume I know the answer to this, but given the difference that kindergarten is, right? We're not obligated to provide full day kindergarten, but we do that.
Yeah.
A school choice is still a school choice. The funding is still exactly the same as if it was a 9th grader. Right?
Correct. Yeah.
So I have a couple of similar questions, kind of feeding off Paul's. One of the things that I guess I've thought about is sort of how many people do we typically lose to Keefe? Is there any consistency to that when you look at like the 9th grade class? Is it range from 2 to 20, or is it typically 8 or 10?
Yeah, it's 2 to 20 is a good question, because we've had years where we've had 0 since I've been superintendent, and last year, Dave, we had 18.
Last year was 18.
Yeah.
This year's numbers are looking smaller than that.
Right. So we don't know, Mark, and it's I think anywhere from 8 to 20 apply is about average, but not everyone gets in first and foremost, and not everyone goes. And quite often, I mean, I don't know, Kelly, how many, if you've tracked how many come back that freshman year, probably 3 or 4 be my guess.
It's always less than 5.
Yeah. So.
And the other sort of more general question is, I think it picks up on the theme sort of that Paul was touching on about sort of the projections.
Yeah.
I know at least on a statewide level, I'm not sure how true this is for us, but there have been kids that have done all sorts of different things, from going to private school to homeschooling to remote schooling. Obviously, the remote kids we keep track of, and those are our students, right? But what about folks that have homeschooled? Do we have enough students in that pod to be concerned about that? And do we have a sense of how many went off to private schools, and whether they were doing that for 1 year because that was in person, but now they might be back?
Good question. At the high school, I'm not worried about that because most of our students stayed in. At the elementary, again, I'm only working on 2 grade levels with regard to school choice, but more globally, Mark, it's a really good question. And it's a conversation we actually had with the superintendent's organization and the commissioner. Was it yesterday or 2 days ago? We're talking about, we need to track and try to find out specifically how many students are going to continue homeschooling, how many have left us that are going to go back private. We picked up students who were private. When we went back full day, we picked up some students across the district. Remote learning is not going to be an option in the fall from the Ashland public school system, unless someone chooses to participate in TECA, which is the online school program offered by the state. That's an option for families. But yeah, we need to get a closer idea. I mean, we're grades 3, 4, 5. We're for Claudia. We're counting on all those kids coming back in. That's again one reason why I'm not looking at adding any positions, school choice positions in those grades.
So, and my last comment, just as in disclosure to my colleagues, I was the person who reached out to Jim and said, I get it's probably just a philosophical point, but we're so worried about spacing, and here we are talking about bringing in kids, and and I certainly looking at the numbers, I know even if we had 5 additional kids in kindergarten and 2nd grade, you're talking about 1 every other classroom, so it doesn't really amount to a whole lot. I just felt the need to kind of voice the observation that we're kind of going in 2 different directions at once on it, but hopefully by the time we get to the fall and this becomes something of a reality, it's not as much a concern. Those are the only comments and questions I had.
Thank you, Mark. Anybody else? Anything else you want to share about it, Jim, before we go for a motion?
No, we just need to have a motion to accept the school choice seats as recommended.
Well, so Lori, if it is a public hearing, you do need to offer
for this
public comment.
Sure. Thank you,
Sorry, Paul.
Paul. Is there anybody here from the community that would like to offer public comment on this? And then seeing none, we can move to the motion. I'm not sure who has it. Looks like we need to list the year and the following grade levels.
Well, we have to say that we will participate in school choice for the
2021-2022 school year, and the following grade levels: K to 9, 10, 11, 12.
No, 9, 10, 11.
12.
9, 10, 11.
Yeah.
Who's got that motion?
Well, I can look it up, but do you want to close the public hearing?
I will close the public hearing.
Public, all right, I've got the motion, but I don't have the grade level, so I move that Ashland participates in the school choice program for the 2021-2022 school year and at the following grade levels.
Okay,
Is it kindergarten? K,
K to 9,
K
10,
to
and 11.
9, 10, and 11. Do I
Correct.
do how many seats or just those grades?
Just those grades.
Okay. Who's gonna second me?
Second,
All in favor, Paul,
Aye.
Mark,
aye,
Kathy,
Aye.
and I for me. Thank you. That passes. And then next up, the budget. We need a vote on the number that we discussed at the budget hearing, the 2021-2022 budget. Do you have that number, Jim?
I
Or
do.
Chris?
I'll just make a comment that nothing has changed. I'm not looking to adjust the budget at this point in time. We're still waiting, obviously, for the state to come out with their budget. I am in constant contact, obviously, with the town manager. But at this point in time, I believe it's prudent that the school committee get their line, budget line set, so we can get that over to the town office. So that budget is numbers.
36, 160.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so I would make a motion to approve the school year. Should we do school year or FY?
FY.
the FY.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the FY '22 school department budget of $36,160,660.
I'll second.
Second,
All in favor, Paul,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Mark? Muted.
He's frozen.
Oh, he's frozen.
Oh.
no, I think I was frozen. I vote yes.
There you go.
Thought you were frozen, but apparently it's me.
I thought I was frozen.
And I for me as well. So that number is voted. And next up is athletics spring season. Stephen?
I'm going to make you co-host, Stephen, so you can share whatever you need to
Okay, thank
share.
you.
You're all set.
All right. All right, well, thank you. I'll try not to go too long here. First, I just want to, again, say thank you. We are finishing up the fall 2 season tomorrow. It went really smoothly. We weren't sure what it was going to look like with both indoor and outdoor sports, but it ended up being fantastic. A special thank you again to the athletes, the coaches, and our athletic trainer. So we're moving right into the spring season, which is set to begin right when we get back from vacation. What we're planning on offering is baseball, softball, boys lacrosse, girls, boys tennis, boys outdoor track, girls outdoor track, and wrestling. The only thing that has changed from my presentation is wrestling actually got approved by the EEA for level 3 competition yesterday, which means that now that needs to go through the MIAA Sports Medicine Committee and Board of Directors before they are officially approved to start competitions. We are not going to offer middle school sports again, which is consistent with what we've done all year. And again, that boils down to supervision and space. We do anticipate offering middle school sports in the fall of 21. Start and end dates, the season's set to begin the 26th and ends July 3rd. I've been getting a lot of questions about that July 3rd date because yes, it seems very late, which is true. The MIA tournament will begin around the middle of June. So that means the state finals would be around July 3rd. The tournament is an opt-in tournament. So all league schedules are going to end around the middle of June. So just depending on how our teams do and how far they go, just our varsity teams, how far they go in playoffs would determine when that end date is. What's different about this season? We're going to run the season as close to normal as possible, which means in the TVL, we're going to have a full schedule, which would be 16 games for fully subscribed sports. We'll play everybody in the TVL large twice and everyone in the TVL small one time. We'll be a lot more spread out in this season. We will be using every day the high school, the middle school, and Stone Park. Everything will be outdoors, which is a nice change of pace other than wrestling. The main thing that's going to be different is that for the first 3 seasons, myself and Amy Mendoza, our athletic trainer, have been able to be at every single event. It's just not going to be possible in the springtime. For instance, on many days, we're going to have baseball games, softball games, lacrosse games, and tennis matches going on at once. So I am going to do my best to hire event staff, and Amy and I are ready to rotate through the fields to make sure everything is covered. So, and also the spring season is the only season that we'll be having MIA sponsored tournaments, which I talked about before. What's going to be the same are safety protocols. We're still going to be doing all the same screenings, practice lengths, using hand sanitizer and wipes, keeping 14 feet between surfaces, and keeping 25 players per surface. We'll keep the same practice schedule. Teams can practice and have 1 day off a week. We will only do out of league games if there's a cancellation, and the ADs will communicate between each other. We're not going to use locker rooms, still bringing our own water bottles. Spectator policy, thank you again for approving to have 2 adult spectators for visitors. We will start with that, and I'd like to have the ability to adjust as sort of the season goes along, in case we get to a point where we're comfortable maybe having some students at games. WACA is going to live stream as much as they can. Again, with a lot of things going at once, it's going to be hard for them to get to everything, so they'll do as much as they can. Transportation will still provide transportation and abide by whatever guidelines the schools are operating on as well. We'll have a return to play protocol for anyone who has had COVID, and close contact will be determined in consultation with Sergeant Berman and Ms. LaCroix. And we will have athletic training rooms, both indoors and outdoors, for students. What else is the same? Our priorities in terms of this season are not changing whatsoever. Safety being the main one, offering kids the opportunity to play, reimagining how athletics are going to be run, and limiting contact. So that is a brief overview of what the season will look like. Happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
I'll open it up for questions or comments.
Sure. Stephen, I was just wondering, you said you and Amy won't be able to be at every event like you were for the other seasons, and you're going to try to hire event staff. But so who would be that event staff, and they would be responsible, they would be making sure all the protocols are being followed?
They would help. So Amy and I will be able to be at the locations where games are played. But for instance, at the middle school, if there's a baseball game, a softball game, and a tennis match going on, we would just have to rotate by the fields.
All right, so you'd be in the area, maybe not right at the event.
Yes, just both of us wouldn't physically be able to be at every single minute of every single game. So the idea would be to hire some event staff, which would be, teachers or coaches or administrators, and have the games covered. So someone is there.
Okay.
Stephen, I kind of have 2 questions. So the reason we weren't doing middle school in the previous seasons is you couldn't be there. So now you're not going to necessarily be there all the time. So I'm sure there's other considerations. So why not middle school sports? Maybe not all of them, but why not any, right? So if the reason was before, the main reason was you couldn't even be there because you were in the one spot, but now that's not the case. So what are the other considerations that making us not offer anything there?
That's a good question. One that we wrestled with really a lot, and it came down to honestly space. Where are we going to put them? As you may or may not remember, our baseball fields are sometimes playable up at the high school and sometimes not. And there's a domino effect on that in terms of where people will be after school. We didn't want to crowd the turf field at the middle school. In the past, we might have 2 or 3 teams out on the turf at once, and we did not want to do that. We talked about offering track at the middle school, but in consultation with the coaches and talking about what would be best for our student athletes, not being able to get them up to our track, we decided that it would just be best to stay consistent and unfortunately not offer the middle school sports this year.
Okay. And my other question is another why question. So we had been talking about in the previous seasons, scheduling those out of league games to make up because, hey, another team is quarantined or whatever. But that was also because you only played 5, right? You had a very limited number of games or something like that. If you're doing a full season, what's the reason for scheduling out of league games if you miss one?
Well, I mean, I guess we're just trying to give the kids an opportunity to play. And if they get canceled, we'd like the opportunity to fill that game with somebody else. You got to remember this spring season, they missed out the entire year last year. They didn't get to play at all. So the state, when from the MIA through the league and everything, we want to give them as many opportunities to get out there on the field and play as they possibly can. So if we're comfortable doing that, if, unfortunately another school was quarantined and we had the opportunity to pick up another game and let them play, I think that would be a win-win for everybody. But our schedule will be league only.
Stephen, I had a couple of questions, or at least a question and a comment. One is, I'm certainly aware that there were a lot of games in the, whatever we call that season we just finished or just finishing, that got canceled because of quarantine issues in other schools. Did we have that problem with any of our teams this past season where somebody on a particular team tested positive, so we had to basically treat them all as close contacts and shut them down? Or was that always sort of a different district that was a problem?
I'll knock on wood, we have not had that the entire year through 3 seasons going till tomorrow. So that's a direct, thank you to the students and the coaches for taking care of what they need to do.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess the other thing is just, it's an observation from having been able to attend a couple of games. I'll just say that there have been things that I've seen or heard about where we're not really seeing the kind of distancing maintained consistently. I've certainly seen games where you're there and you're reminding players to spread out, and coaches might do that. But I really, whatever you can do, and I'm not trying to put additional conditions on things, but whatever you can do to really emphasize the point that kids are supposed to be spacing out. As long as that directive is out there from the public health community, I think that's got to be, emphasized firmly. And I think the other part is certainly until we officially approve students, I'm a little wary of how many people seem to be kind of hanging out near a game, might be kind of paying attention, not really officially there. And I'm concerned that as we open up now 2 facilities, right, the middle school as well as the high school, and then the third really with Stone Park, which is really a public park, right? It's down. That those are going to present more issues. So more than anything else, I just want to emphasize my concern about enforcement of expectations. I don't think we want to sick the COVID cop on him, but he's listening. So anyway, just again, messaging to everybody that if we're supporting this, they've really got to make sure that everybody's doing their part, so we don't end up in this scenario like some other schools have been.
Certainly, yeah, I agree with that.
Anybody else have some questions for Stephen? Kathy?
Yeah, I do. So Stephen, how would wrestling work?
That's a great question. I've caught wind of what the modifications potentially would be. Again, they have to go through the sports medicine committee and then the MIA board of directors. And I find out at the same time as you do when it's public information. My understanding is they will be wrestling in, obviously their cohorts. They would only be coming in contact with the person in their weight class. And then there would be 1 dual meet per week just against 1 other school. So they'd only be coming in contact with 1 other person, and matches, I believe, will be outdoors as much as possible. So that's what I've caught wind of that will be coming down the pike. But again, we'll know more hopefully before the 26th. That's the goal, but the state will get it to us when they get it to us. So wrestling may be delayed practicing a couple of days. We'll see.
So I guess, Stephen, that kind of begs a question that maybe I don't know if anybody wants me to ask, but I'm going to ask anyway. We had talked about the pool testing, and potentially saying, look, if kids are going to be engaging in in-person activities, whether it's athletics or clubs in school, in the building, do we want to condition that on participating in our pool testing program? And it seems like, Kathy's question about wrestling, I don't know if I don't know if it's a right concern or not to think of it, but it certainly seems like a more close contact sport than any of the others. It makes me wonder whether we should be talking about that. And I don't think you've made a recommendation, nor has Jim, but is that something that's being considered? And if so, when are we hearing about that, given where we're going to be a week from now?
Jim, do you have any thoughts on that? Because
nice punt, Stephen.
Yeah. Well done, young lad.
Yeah, thank you. But I mean, I'll punt that one to Jim.
Right. So we got two theories here, right? Can we and should we? And do we have the capacity to? There's probably 3 or 4 questions in there, really. I firmly believe that we should be doing it. And I think Kelly would 100% support that. That being said, what do we have in terms of a standing? I'm assuming, Natick used their Board of Health is actually the one who is mandating it over there. We don't necessarily have that that leverage, I think, that the Board of Health over in Natick has. It's a very different board for sure in terms of what they're doing and the role they've played in their school system the whole year. But I'm all in favor of testing all those athletes, as well as anyone participating in senior week activities, as well as anyone participating in clubs and activities where they're congregating in person. And, one of the things I was hesitant to do was to bring it forward yet without having further conversations with Audrey and the nursing staff at the high school. This was our first week, Mark, of seeing what 110 students looks like. And Audrey, you said it was 3 hours from the beginning to end?
Well, it was 3 hours from beginning to end, but then all the contact tracing and getting the kids home and.
Right, afterwards, right. That I'm just talking about the testing alone.
Oh, the testing itself, yeah.
Yeah. So
I did share with you guys the last meeting that I attended a meeting specifically on pool testing. And there were about 80 people there. And so that included many different districts, some that we interact with and some in different parts of the states. It had nursing staff from some of those districts, superintendents from some of those districts, and science and infectious disease doctors. And so like the gist was that a lot of, number one, there seems to be an understanding that it is something that we can do. Some people are doing it through their boards of health, but others are not doing it through their boards of health. And the idea that it's still okay because it's a condition to participate in something extra. It gets a little bit more tricky when you're talking about, restricting education or access into the building for education, but for anything else, people are doing it and it seems to be okay. And it seems to be something that, a lot of people desire, obviously, because it's a big step in keeping the community safe. Also, in light of some of the things that we already talked about in this meeting, like wrestling might have more contact, or Mark's concern about maybe observing some, activity at games where people are standing kind of close. So it's just an added layer of protections. Anyhow, I really just wanted to share that it can be done. I mean, it is a choice that we have, and whether or not right now is the time to make that choice. We'll give Jim and Audrey. Some districts have or plan to hire extra staff to make that happen. So that might be something that, after talking to Ed and Audrey, if it's too overwhelming, we would have to have a discussion about whether or not, we have funds that we could apply to that. But again, I just wanted to pass along what I learned. There will be more meetings again, specifically on pool testing. And so I'm happy to continue attending them and passing the information along to you guys.
I certainly don't want to get ahead of our capacity. I don't want to create something that just isn't workable for us. But, I agree with what you just said, Lori. I think we have the right to do it. I think it is something that, it makes sense from a public policy perspective. But I'm also mindful of some of the conversation we had a little bit, maybe 2-3 meetings ago, in saying that, look, if we're going to do that, we're not going to start it in the middle of the last season,
Right.
where we're going to say people who sort of didn't make that commitment or didn't understand what they're getting into, that rather we would revisit for the beginning of this season. And now we're here, right? I mean, this is our last meeting before the season starts, which will be a week from Monday, and there's no school next week. So
We
it
have a
feels
meeting
like,
tomorrow.
what's that?
We have one scheduled tomorrow.
One what?
Meeting.
Home meeting? So, I mean, it feels like to me, we need to make a decision as a district about what we're going to do so that people who are going to participate know what they're signing up for. And I know, practically speaking, they've already registered, right? I mean, in almost all circumstances, people were required to register before or likely have. So, they then be in a situation of saying, okay, well, I guess if you don't want to, we're going to have to refund the money or however you handle the logistics. But I think we're at a point where we have to make a decision on that issue, either let it go and not do it or make that call. And I certainly respect the fact that Jim and Audrey need to talk and figure out what we have the capacity to do. But I just don't think we can really push this off much longer.
Yeah, I agree with that, Mark. And I struggle with, if it was just a simple question of, do I think we should be doing it? I would completely agree with Jim. I'd say, yes, let's do it. But there's lots of factors, even what Jim brought up, because he also talked about clubs. And, I've been on here talking about, let's make sure we're equitable. Let's not just, open up sports. Let's make sure we're taking that lens. If we're allowing sports to do more, let's allow everyone else to do more. But that works in reverse. We didn't want to throw this onto mid-season last season, but that was kind of a sports only view of things. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think we can put it on anytime, because anytime we put it on after the beginning of the year, we're doing it in the middle of a club, right? The clubs don't start this week or next week, right? They're ongoing. So we're doing the same thing to them. So there's also that. There's the capacity, there's the logistics of, we don't need to be able to operate it, because if we're saying we're going to do it, we can't say, yeah, we don't really have the capacity today. So what does that mean? The kids can't participate, so it's all those things. I'm in a complete agreement. I think we should be doing it. I would, if everybody said we could do it, I would 100% support it and vote for it. And the people that want to complain about it, they'll complain. But, I joked on here before, everybody's talking about wrestling. The ironic thing is that can't be close contact.
Right, it's a short
the time of
match, right?
The time of the periods in match isn't long enough, right? So, but yeah. So I mean, Jim, can we get the answers to some of those questions in a time frame where we could make a decision? Or
yeah, I mean, again, I think part of it was I wanted to see how it worked with everyone back. So we're going to be adding into the fold probably, how many athletes, Stephen, in the spring?
Just 275.
Right. So now let's assume some of those athletes are already participating in the pooling.
So it goes from 100 to
400,
250.
250. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we would need to add capacity or Audrey, the only other option is to do testing in 2 different days again. So a Tuesday, Wednesday, or a Monday, Tuesday. So it spreads it out, but can you?
Well, I certainly don't want to overwhelm anybody. And if we need more capacity, we should have a discussion about that. But, our percentage of people participating is already significantly lower than it really should be. And, not just as compared to where this is happening in other places, but to make it really effective here. Obviously, we're learning some things and they've been helpful, but adding on those 275 is we should have those numbers anyway, regardless of where they come from.
Right. Well, and again,
Yeah.
Audrey and I, our conversation yesterday was, are we thinking about adding another building into the mix as well? Right.
Yeah.
So not just the high school, but are there other schools within the district that we feel should be part of the pool testing process?
So Jim and Audrey and Ed, there's a question to you. What's more valuable to you, right? What do you think is more valuable in expanding pool testing to other buildings and things like that, as opposed to trying to get participation from athletics? Because like I said, Jim, I think it's a good point that, the same way we're saying, hey, let's not get, open up athletics without doing clubs. The other side of the coin works too, is like, if we're making it a requirement for athletics, you could say that, hey, the clubs don't necessarily have contact, a lot of them, and that might be a reasoning, but having it only for athletics, not for clubs. But again, if you could have a choice of doing only one, of expanding our pool testing to other buildings, or testing all of our extracurricular students, I'll say. If you had to make that choice, do you think one would be more valuable than the other, or more feasible, or be able to operate that situation better?
I'm going to punt, Audrey.
I'll go first. I'll go first.
Their staff.
I'll go first. I think if we were going to have a spread, I definitely think it would definitely be at the high school level. And I think I would push to get more in one building first, especially now where they're playing teams from other communities, instead of trying to move it to other buildings at this point.
Audrey?
I kind of like Laurie's point that I wish we had more participation. I wish it was more district-wide participation, but I can see your point, Ed. I don't know.
And I do want to make one other point. Right now, where we're seeing our pretty big uptick, ironically, it's 3 to 5 year olds. We've had a couple of outbreaks in some of our daycares, and all the towns around us right now are seeing similar. Hopkinton's seeing it, Framingham seeing it. So we're seeing over the last 2 weeks, 3 to 5 year olds.
I do think the middle school and high schoolers are out and about more, but we are seeing huge spread within the homes, which if the parents are out and about and spreading within the homes. We catch those pretty quickly.
So maybe I'll ask the question of Audrey, because to me, the most important question to me is whether we have the capacity to add, call it 250 kids to the high school program. I mean, if you were to tell me, yeah, we can do that as is, right, without even worrying about whether we can add staff or what have you, if we can do that, then I think we ought to be doing that. And I agree with you that I want to see it spread throughout the district. But we're talking about the capacity at a single building, which may be a little bit of a separate issue. So, I guess my question is, can we do it? Do we have the capacity to do it with current staffing?
I think over 2 days, I think would need support. I don't think the high school has enough support to do it. I think they're willing to do it. They're willing to give it a try.
Yeah.
The other piece is if you get a positive pool, that's a lot of work too. We can handle that part. You're adding 300, almost 300 more kids. How many more positives are we going to get? Which for every positive that comes in, we're going to get 22 quarantines potentially times X amount. So it's a lot of work on that end. That's the part that's scaring me the most. Actually doing the testing is not something that I think it's doable if we have enough volunteers to help us. It's not that you need nursing staff to do the pool testing.
Yeah, and it's a catch-22, right? What you just mentioned, I hear it and I kind of like, well,
That's exactly why you want to do it, right?
we if they're there and knowing about it's better, right? But
Right.
then, hey, you're doing something to find out. Now you got to take action, right? And that's a lot of work. So
It's not that we're not willing to do it. We just need.
no.
You know, I need some
Audrey,
support.
I was certainly not saying you're not willing to do it.
Well, my question is though, so let's say we said, yeah, let's do it. Do we have enough time to test all of them, get the results back before they have a match or a meet or something? Right?
I don't think it's going to
So you
tie that
know.
way, Kathy.
What's that?
I don't think it's going to tie together that way because of the schedules. I think it's going to be an ongoing thing week to week. And, we're going to pick up kids as they get tested and they're positive. But, I know like baseball is an example, right? They're playing probably 3-4 games a week. You're never going to have all the tests done, so that, for next week, right? It's going to be, you test a pool on Monday, you get the results Thursday, now you're taking them out. I don't know that it's ever going to tie directly to it. It's just the more frequently we do it, the more kids we catch that are positive and get them out of the building.
The turnaround time is about 1.5 days, Kathy. So, traditionally, I think we're getting a rhythm now when we see something that's taken a little bit longer that we might have a concern. So of all the pool tests that we did yesterday, or Tuesday, most of them came back Wednesday morning, or Wednesday afternoon. We knew that most of them were all negative. So we're getting results back quickly. It's just a matter of timing for sure. Like Mark said, if we have to spread it out, which is what I would suggest, is we spread it out over a couple days. So it doesn't tie up. Again, you have to remember, while you have the process of doing the testing, our nursing staff still has to do their nursing work during the day as well. That's why we moved it off from the Monday to the Tuesday, because Mondays we were finding the nursing staff was saying it was really a lot to do on a return day, when they're finally checking in with kids and they're getting the week going.
Yeah, I guess where I am at is, I hear that and I hear all those concerns, but we've also, to a person, have all been saying how abysmal the participation is. We want more, we want more. Here we have an opportunity to get more. And so I'd be wanting to do that. I kind of agree with Ed on, it probably makes the most sense to be testing the ones with the more capacity to spread, right? Which is the, older kids, the ones at the high school. And also the ones that probably externally are, well, we've seen it, that they've externally been doing more to contract and spread, right? Outside of school. So I don't know, I'd be in favor of doing it. And I know there's complications, but unless somebody's saying we can't, I think we should try.
Yeah, I agree, Paul.
I'm good with that. And I think, but that's messaging we need to get out there if the committee votes on it tonight. And I think where we have to focus our attention for Audrey and her staff is supporting them, especially with the contact tracing component, because that's where it's going to take all the time and effort. And that means our administrative team is going to have to, and we're willing to pitch in with this process.
I think the way to think about it, at least from my lens, is, if the committee is to pass that requirement, that people participating in athletics and co-curricular activities that are in person, right, not co-curricular, virtual, we leave it to you guys to sort of deal with the logistics of how do you make it work, whether that means you're doing, pool testing every Tuesday all day, or you're doing what amounts to 2 or 3 hours of it 4 days a week or 5 days a week. That obviously you guys are charged with making that work. We just cause the problems. So unless somebody's really sort of putting up a stop sign saying this is never going to work, I think we ought to, at least as a policy, say that it needs to work until you come back to us and say it's not working, and then we can sort of think about okay, how do we deal with that?
Yeah, Mark, and
That's
the way, then I'm thinking about it again, like we opened it up to everybody and had, 50, 60, 75% signed up.
Yeah.
As is what is really out there. Again, like at least of the people that I've interacted with, we're much lower significantly. So let's say 50% was the lowest number I've heard. I mean, if the amount of people signed up that we would have wanted and we would have expected, we would have had to find the capacity. We opened it up. So, I think the same thing here. If it's something that we think is important, we need to make sure that we can support it. And whatever needs to happen there, we need to we were prepared to do it a few weeks ago, had it turned out that way. And if it's something that's important enough to us, I think we can figure it out now.
Can I just add one more thing too, though? If you decide you're gonna go this route too, just keep in mind too, we'll probably have to have an additional discussion later on, starting Monday, when 16 and 17-year-olds will be eligible to be vaccinated. So you just to add that maybe as an open item for later.
You're saying, Ed, like once everybody's vaccinated, can that change some of the policies? Yeah.
Right, because there's going to be a lot, because the Department of Public Health is definitely saying they're going to be coming out with more exclusions once, with vaccinated people.
Right.
Yeah, so Ed, you're just talking about, hey, you can either participate or be vaccinated is essentially what it'll come down to, pending their guidance that who the heck knows when it'll come.
Right. Once DPH comes up with their final guidelines. Like they've
And I
already
think that
changed.
there might be some athletes that are vaccinated already. When I went to get my vaccination, the only other people that were there with me were 18-year-old boys.
Right.
So,
So right, because even right now is once you're with Pfizer and Moderna, once you're 14 days post your second vaccine, if you have an exposure, you no longer have to quarantine as a close contact.
Right.
But we'll be through school by then.
Right.
So
Kelly.
are you saying, would we have that exclusion too then? Like, if you can show that you've been vaccinated?
I think
Deal with that later.
Audrey's point.
Yeah.
Deal with that later.
is-
that go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah,
Not yet.
and to Audrey's point, that's after the school year anyway, right? Unless they've already done it.
Yeah, there could be kids already. There are kids
Right,
already.
but that's
A lot
probably,
already that are vaccinated.
Full week.
I think the decision that the committee needs to make right now is whether we're ready to make a motion to get this started, or whether, Jim, if you tell us that you need a little bit more time just to get some information back to us that might be pertinent to a decision.
I would say off, and then I'll deal
And
with.
you're confident you can make it work?
I'll deal
You're
with.
going to try to make it work.
Audrey's gonna chastise me tomorrow, but then we'll do the stitching later.
she's not gonna wait till tomorrow.
I already got the text. No.
Lori, the only concern I have is that in terms of our agenda, we
Yeah,
can tie this to athletics, but we have nothing on the agenda that talks about the co-curriculars or pool testing more generally. So it seems like we need to be doing it equitably, so it's applied to activities that are meeting in person, non-athletic ones. And I'm not sure, Kelly could probably tell us there aren't any, or there are very few, but
It's very
with
few.
our agenda, we're really talking about athletics now is what's on there.
Well,
So I think-
and Mark, and while I'm the one that kind of brings that up, right, and
Yep.
harps on that, there is a difference, right? I mean, Kelly, keep me honest here. I'm assuming those clubs in general have a lot less contact with others,
Well, contact robotics, Paul.
Yeah, so I'm assuming those are less likely, those are much lower risk activities than sports.
The clubs that are meeting in person tend to be clubs that have less than 10 students in them. They're meeting in a classroom following the classroom COVID protocols.
Yeah, so, I mean, as much as I harp on the equity piece, I mean, I'd be fine to saying to limit it to athletics for this thing, because I think the risk is different.
The one club that would be different is we do have ultimate frisbee starting.
I do think we'll get questions if we just go the athletics route, and that was my hesitation when I punted the gym. We will have those questions. And then another thing to think about, if just looking at the athletics side of things, is the sports are put into different categories, right? So yes, there's a lot more contact in wrestling than there would be in robotics, but is there in tennis, right? So just to look at the entire picture, that's where my hesitation was. So for whatever it's worth, I would be all in favor for any extracurricular.
And I think, I'd see the logistical difference, but we're also, in some respects, just trying to elevate the number of people participating in the pool testing process. And we have sort of equal leverage to drive that outcome for kids doing different things. I think we should be looking at that. I just don't think we can take up the question of what we really want to do with the co-curricular activities now. In terms
of how the agenda is laid out for tonight. But I think, what we do for one group, we should do for all groups.
Yeah.
But I agree that the agenda really lets us only deal with athletics right now, and that the other.
So let's be clear. Let's use different words. We can.
But it's not best practice, right?
Well, we have COVID on here, we have athletics, and we've been talking about this for a while. So we can decide not to, or we can take two votes. We can say athletics today, and something you can keep tomorrow's meeting. We can do those things. So I don't think we should delay one. If we're going to do, I think we should at least do athletics. If we want to do the other one in a subsequent meeting, but again, we still can, right? Lori had no idea we were going to do this, and you brought it up as a question, and then we got support from Jim. So it's certainly within our purview to do it. But I'm fine punting that piece of it, but I think we should at least act on I don't want to delay, because let's put it, the athletics is the larger pool. It's a larger number of people that need to know about this, so I wouldn't want to punt that.
I agree. I guess I'll make a motion. I'll move to that the school district move forward with sports for the spring season, conditioned on the requirement that anyone choosing to participates also in the pool testing program.
I would second that.
And then all in favor, Kathy?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And aye for me. And that passes. And then we will handle the next issue at another meeting. Everybody on board with that?
Hey, Kelly, just out of curiosity, what's the rough number of those students in the other clubs?
In any other clubs?
The clubs that would be meeting in person, the clubs in person. What rough number? I'm not asking like.
There's a lot of crossover, probably 50.
Okay.
And just so I can be clear on the messaging that I will be sending out, I doubt that we'll have enough time to pull this together before Monday, the 26th. So, the messaging will be that by participating, you'll participate in pool testing, but we're not going to be able to get it done before that first day. So kids.
So it's basically their participation in the program. The program operates at whatever pace they can do, right?
They have to sign up.
Yep.
Yeah. I agree. Let's just make sure we put the co-curricular part of this on the next agenda for whenever that is.
Right. Yeah.
Anything further on that?
And so I guess the other question, Lori and Mark and Kathy, is our next meeting where we could bring that up would be next Friday if I was regular scheduled. Do we want to get that out in front and have something posted for Tuesday or something like that to just handle this to get it out, or do we want to wait?
I would be in favor of the next Friday meeting.
Yeah, I'm planning to take that day off, but I don't think we're going anywhere. So I can do it from my phone.
I
Or-
I
fine
will
with
not
that.
be here on Friday myself,
All right.
so.
Or we
I
could
was
just
gonna
wait
ask-
till May. But
We'd have a quorum at 3. We certainly have talked through it. I mean, I think
yeah, okay.
Lori's
So
voiced her opinion.
Well, but, oh, so you, Mark, you would still be able to, I mean, we can schedule a quick meet if next Friday, it doesn't work, we can schedule one for Thursday or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we were waiting till whatever we have the week after next, and realistically, in terms of implementation, it's going to be that the only thing we're changing is giving Jim the ability to communicate a consistent message for all activities, right? Whether it's sports or other co-curriculars. And I think there's some value in that.
How
So
about, let's
we-
shoot for a meeting next week, and we can work behind the scenes to pick a day that a quorum can be available to address it.
That works too.
Okay.
Because the next one
Yeah.
after that would be the 30th, because we don't have a third meeting this month.
Right, it just gets too late, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we good?
Good.
Yeah, all right. Next up, the superintendent's mid-cycle update. I'll say it again for anyone who's watching and wants to know more about this process. For years now, the school committee has adopted the Massachusetts superintendent evaluation process, where we set goals and vote on them with the superintendent in the fall. And those are the goals by which we evaluate the superintendent at the end of the year. And then midway through, or in our case, sometimes a little later than that, for a variety of different reasons, we check in with the superintendent in a more official way, just to make sure that we're on track with the goals that have been set, or perhaps we've decided to pivot on something. And also, in fairness to the superintendent, if there are any concerns, he can know about them before the end of the year, and it's not a surprise. So that's the process. So the superintendent shared his goals last time, and whether or not he was on target to meet them, or some are in progress. And the committee has weighed in that everybody's okay, on the same page with where we're at with all the goals. Some goals understandably take longer anyway, and that's built into the process. Some goals are a little bit either ahead or behind based on the energy that's being put into the COVID effort for more than a year now. So we're good with where all the goals are at and the progress, agreed. 4 people weighed in, I should say, and the consistent themes were a huge amount of appreciation for leadership during this period of time, and full understanding and appreciation for all that's involved in the superintendent, Jim, and what he's doing, and also supporting what all of you are doing. And that's not lost on any of us, the commitment, starting with Jim and trickling down to all of you that you've all put in this year. So much appreciation, Jim, to you for all of that, while at the same time managing to move us forward in some areas as well, working on diversity and anti-racist activities, working on social emotional learning and keeping that moving forward. We've got a new school building project, and all really important things that we're continuing to move forward in this moment when much has been required of you that nobody had planned. So all good. Also, another comment was appreciation for the work certainly that you do behind the scenes and managing relationships and keeping things moving smoothly, the kinds of things that make our job a lot easier. So we appreciate you for that as well. So you're on track, and it won't be long before we're back with the full official evaluation in writing. So if anybody wants to add anything to that or clarify anything, or if Jim, you have anything you want to say, go for it.
I agree with everything you said, Laurie.
No, I just want, I want to go back and revisit the athletic thing in a moment. So when people are done.
All right, Laurie, take back what you said until he's done with that and see what happens.
Yeah, now that you're waffling, I want to revisit the evaluation.
No worries. Please. I'm not waffling on the testing or anything. I think part of our discussion and the agenda, the way it was set up, was Stephen was looking for the spring sports season recommendations to be approved. That's all.
My motion was to approve his proposal as long as it included the pool testing.
Okay, fair enough. Then okay, good.
Yeah, so he said approve the spring sports.
Yeah, that's how I
Okay,
understood it.
I wanted to make sure we got it correct. That's all.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's very important. So
Yeah.
thank you for clarifying that. And yes, all set to move forward with spring sports
Okay,
with
thank
that caveat. Anybody else before we move to the next topic here? Okay, so let's see. Assistant Superintendent update. Mike, do you have anything?
I don't have anything to report tonight.
Okay, thank you. And Kathy, do you have anything?
I do. Okay. Between April 2nd, 2021 and April 15th, 2021, I, Kathleen Bates, authorized by my signature payables in the amount of $295,971.26. This includes general fund expenses of $197,061.24 and revolving expenses of $98,910.02. I also signed off on $1,112,646.79 of payroll.
Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
And Jim, still no gifts and donations this evening.
That's correct.
Okay, and we're at the end, committee reports of activities. Anybody have anything they would like to share?
Just a couple quick things. So one, I was, as the committee recalls, I was, I guess, designated as the liaison to area. And I attended with Mike and others, their education committee meeting last Thursday, I think it was. Most of it was kind of summary and revisiting some of the things that were reported out to us before. Just a great group of people really try to do some good work and really appreciate the collaboration between that group and our administrative staff, and sort of still get my feet on the ground in terms of what how we're going to be able to help and support. But just really pleased with the work and the relationship that's forming there. That was one. And the other one is last night I had an MASC board meeting, and two things I want to share from that. One is that tomorrow is the lobbying day for MASC, so they have a virtual day on the Hill that folks can register for if they're interested. It's an opportunity to meet with legislators. I do not know yet whether our legislators are going to be participating. I know that Senator Spilka has been invited, but they were waiting to hear back based on her availability. And then the other thing is that I've been coordinating with the representative from Division 4, which is kind of more the 495 belt out through Worcester. My counterpart there is Michelle Bowden-Hettinger from Marlborough, and she and I have been talking about putting together a joint program for our two divisions that kind of takes the dialogue that's been happening at kind of a higher level about equity and race, and is going to try to provide school districts an opportunity to hear what other people are doing. So we're talking about bringing in a district that has been doing the work for a long time and hopefully has done it well. And we have a lead on one district, and then others that are kind of trying to get going with it, so that everybody can just have a dialogue about what are we really doing to implement these ideas and act on them, rather than just sort of having conversation alone. So Michelle and I are working on that, and we're hoping that we're going to have a program that'll be open to all Division 2 members, which is certainly the division we're in, but covers 50-something school districts between here and like the Everett, Chelsea, Saugus area, up to New Hampshire border, and then her division as well. So I will provide more information on that once we have details, but there'll be a general email going out once we have that set, hopefully sometime in May.
Paul?
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out also what I had and hadn't said since last time. So I think I had given some a teaser that we had a recommendation for the construction manager last time. So At our April 6th meeting, we did vote to approve Shamit Design and Construction as our construction manager. I will share very briefly. This is the team from Shamit, and we're just really excited. So when Jim and I left the interviews, the night we did the second interviews, and we made our we decided on the recommendation we were going to provide to this committee. I think we were both conflicted because we had a lot of great we didn't have a wrong choice, and then before, so we still don't have a contract signed with them, but they jumped in 2 foot right off the bat. We invited them. That was a Wednesday that we made our recommendation as a subcommittee, so that they have not been approved by the building committee or anything like that. We invited them to a project call on Friday morning, and they weren't just there to say hi. They were already there listening, and then jumping in and providing some input and really hitting the ground running. And I think Jim and I, we texted when they were on that call, and we're like, okay, no more conflictions. No, we're not concerned. They were never concerned, but just, do we make there wasn't a wrong decision, but did we make the right decision? And I think both of us thought that once that Friday morning meeting hit and they were just hitting the ground running, we were very, very happy. So that's exciting, and they are working diligently on doing a first pass at an estimate for our design development set that just came out Monday. So I think that is really the big news. So we're just really excited that rounds out the project team. So yeah, I don't know, Jim, if you wanted to add anything to that, but.
No, there was no bad choice. I think I agree with you. After listening to them the next day or 2 days later, they were the best choice. And I feel really comfortable and can't wait to work with them. And the town of Ashland's going to be very happy.
Quick question on the project. When are we breaking ground? There's an official bulldozer kind of thing, or?
October, November is the current schedule.
Yeah.
So we'll go before planning, I think next month. So the permitting will start as early as next month, but breaking ground will be in the fall.
Excellent.
Anybody else?
I joined a webinar last week called Beyond Reopening. Beyond Reopening, what will it take to address student needs and accelerate learning? It was put on by the Mass Business Alliance for Education. And, there was a panel of speakers. So my big takeaway from that was they all were saying, when the kids come back to school next year, let's not go back to normal. Let's rethink what a normal school day might be. And they were saying, with the federal dollars coming in, that, we'll have, a couple of years to spend that. And maybe there's a way to rethink how the school day is, especially at the different levels, like at the high school, and, all the innovative learning that's been going on with the teaching staff this year, and all the creative ways they've come up with trying to teach our kids. Maybe there's a different way to be thinking of how the school day would look. So I thought it was a really good webinar, and I'd be curious to know, if Mike and Jim, if there've been any talks, have you been thinking about that or talking with the staff at all? But if that's something you've been, are there any talks about that, or, maybe at a later meeting we could talk about it more, but.
How so, Kathy? How we're going to use the federal funds?
Well, kind of that, yeah. And
I've got a few ideas.
Is there any excitement on the staff, that, with all the remote work that they did and
There's no
You're
excitement
saying,
about.
Kathy, like, what have we learned and how can, or have
Yeah.
we learned
No.
some things that we can do differently? Yeah.
No, there's,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, no, there's no excitement with regard to teaching remotely.
Yeah. Well, not even staying remote, but just any of the innovative things that, that have been
Sure, I think there'll be,
collaboration that's gone on and how we,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, no, I think that, I mean, we can certainly report back on some things, but certainly the use of Google Classroom is going to continue for a lot of folks. Those types of things, the use of technology will certainly increase a little bit more with everyone having Chromebooks. I mean, we've moved further ahead in terms of those logistical things that we weren't able to because we didn't have the technology. But let's not be blind to the fact that we're not going to get like millions and millions of dollars from the federal government. Unless you're in a big city and really poor, they will be getting tens of millions. But we will not be. And one of our main focal points will be looking at trying to continue to reduce class sizes, especially at the middle school. So I'll give you a foreshadow there. But
Hey, Kath, did they
Yes.
actually share any specific ideas of what they were thinking about when they're saying like what they would
Well-
want to see implemented or anything like that?
Well, one thing one of them was saying was not specifically Mark, but like, how, it was hard to get teachers this year and they lacked some of the licensing, Jim, or like they didn't have to have the MTELs.
Yep.
Some of the teachers. So maybe even like that, like content teachers and stuff like at the high school level. I don't know, would one teacher be like the content and the content teacher, and then you could have other teachers helping out that maybe weren't the expert in those areas, but then you would have teachers that could be teaching it with the help of the content teacher. And other things too, like just flexibility and schedule with high school students, like instead of, do they have to go to school, the 8:30 to the 2 or whatever. Some of the flexibility that came about with being remote, they didn't have to be in the classroom all the time, like consistently. So I just thought that was intriguing. So that's what I was thinking, Jim, like, I don't know, do you have to just be sitting, or Kelly, do they have to be just sitting in their rooms? Is there like innovative ways that they could, even within the building, but I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting discussion.
I signed up for that, but wasn't able to go, so I'm glad somebody else did.
Yeah. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, maybe like some discussion for a summer workshop if we ever do have one again. Kind of a debriefing on what just happened and,
right.
whether or not there are any lessons that we can take and rethink some of the things we do, but probably it's a little too early, but I think it's something we should keep on the radar.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathy.
Sure.
Anybody else? All right, that's it then. I can take a motion to adjourn.
I can make one. I move to adjourn.
And I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, Kathy?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Aye, and thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest
Thanks,
of your
everybody.
evening.
Good night.
No meeting tomorrow.
Oh, no meeting. Yep.